Hello and welcome to Sovereign RPG. I am Sovereign and today we are back in the Basics Guide series for Albion Online. I'm currently playing on my actual PC client because I'm having issues with overheating on my phone with everything plugged into it, and I'm pretty sure it's going to actually kill it if I continue to do it. So I'm going to have to just do it on the PC. I will let you know if anything is different on the mobile UI. But everything is exactly the same no matter what anyway, depending on what settings that you have in the options. If you're doing the touch settings or you're doing the D-pad settings is the only real difference that you'll have. Right, so today we're going to be talking about dungeons, the different kinds of dungeons in the game, and what you actually need to do in those dungeons. So basically a dungeon is an area where players can fight various mobs which drop silver and tokens and other loot, etc. And you actually get rewarded with fame, challenge points, or faction points. There are two major categories within dungeons in Albion Online. There are sort of instance dungeons / expeditions, which we will go through in more detail, and open world dungeons. So instance dungeons are only accessible by you or your group, depending on which one you're doing. And you do that by entering a gateway or portal inside of the cities. You'll see it on the map. And they are called expeditions. You can do these daily for extra bonuses. So that's something you definitely should do, especially if you are a new player. It does give you quite a decent amount of silver and some good fame if you do the expedition and get that daily bonus. So open world dungeons are kind of your standard dungeons that you get in most MMOs, and they are randomized. You have solo dungeons, which are designed for 1 to 2 players, but any number of players can enter those dungeons. This gentleman's about to go into this solo dungeon here. Then you have group dungeons, which are made for 3 to 5 players. You have raid dungeons, which are 6+ players. And your open world dungeons, which you can see one of them right here. So the solo randomized dungeons are basically these dungeons you find out on the maps. There'll be these stone things. The green glow on these dungeons here are your solo randomized dungeons. Traps, enemies, and multiple bosses with a loot box at the end of the dungeon. Let's see if we can go find another one, and we'll go in and see if we can show you a little bit of that dungeon. Now, I am way over geared for this on this character. And here we have a solo dungeon. Let's see if we can go inside of this. See if anyone's in there actually doing it. Doesn't seem like anyone's actually in here. Let's just kill these guys. Make sure to pick up your silver and pick up any loot that drops. There's not an auto loot in the game. Let's go into a room over here and actually start grabbing up. So basically, you just be running through. You'll be killing loads of groups of mobs until you get to a boss. Just absolutely melt these dudes. As I said, I'm way over geared, but you can do this pretty simply. These are quite low level. We are in a tier 4 zone. So basically, you can do these from T3 to T4 above. Right, and let's get to the actual boss of the area so I can show you just the end here. So we're just going to run through all the way. There's a sort of little mini boss here. You want to be getting out of the mechanics. I was well out of that, but it seems like I was stuck, and actually they got the stun off for me on that one. Give me a little bit of a clap. And those little random mini bosses inside the dungeon, you will get a loot box and you'll get some stuff in here. Usually it's just like bags of silver or tomes or maybe an item sometimes. Now there are different kinds of builds that you can use to do these dungeons. You can pretty much do them with any actual weapon combination. You just have different ways of doing it. I personally love the Great Axe build. It's a bit of a meta chatty type build, but I do enjoy using this actual build itself. If you'd like to know what this build is, just let me know down in the description and I'll make a video on it. But this is more sort of your end game stuff. This is end game gear, end game level abilities, etc. The Great Axe is a very useful build even at the early game. So when you're at the end of the dungeon, you'll see this actual symbol on the ground that's on fire. This will show you that this is the final room with the final boss in it. Let's just go around and actually grab everyone. I wouldn't recommend actually going around and grabbing everything in here. You can see that it's a blue chest. Not very good, not very like high tier. You can go up to like, you can have green, blue, purple, and yellow. Let's just actually just sit in here and wait for our actual stuff to come up. This guy's going to do his whirl on me. Normally, if you're doing this in the early game, you're going to need to start worrying about the actual stuff that's on the floor. You'll open up the chest, you'll find out what's in the chest, and that's basically the dungeon actually done. Now, you can actually, when you finish the dungeon, use this little icon. It'll be on the phone as well, which is a doorway with an arrow up. You use that, and you can actually leave the solo dungeon without having to run all the way back to the entrance. It's just a quick exit that will come up when you actually... You can use that at any point during the dungeon. It's not a problem. So there are other dungeon types that will have this similar block here. You'll have the green ones, which are solo, the blue ones, which are group, the red and orange ones, which are corrupted. The corrupted dungeons do have your PvP. I do not recommend doing those corrupted dungeons until you're getting used to your actual weapon and your build and your character. And then you have the elite dungeons, which are known as the Avalonian Roads, and they will be white. Now, don't go into them until much later. These are sort of what they would call your end game dungeons and your end game content. If you've played EVE Echoes or EVE Online, sorry, not EVE Echoes, because they haven't actually added my bloody wormholes. It's like wormholes in EVE Online. For some reason, I just felt like absolutely massacring that group of white rabbits. They just appeared there. Now these solo dungeons in these tier 4 zones, the blue zones, etc., and the yellow zones, they are actually perfectly safe. Players can go inside of these dungeons, but if they're in there first, you go to the front of the entrance of the dungeon and it's usually empty, and you'll know that someone's already in there, so you just go out of the dungeon and go and find another one. You use these basically at the beginning to farm your fame, get your equipment leveled up, so you want to hit to about tier 5 Reaver and your tier 5 gear. Then you can go into the yellow zones and find these same types of dungeons there and do higher level expeditions. Now I'll quickly show you where the expedition is. So we'll go back into Fort Sterling and I'll show you on the map what the icon is for the expedition zones. Expeditions are pretty simple. They're basically the same as the solo instance dungeons, except you will be the only person inside of them. It's completely instance for you and you alone. So there are group dungeons and raid dungeon content for later on. I won't go through them in this guide. I just gave you the basic information on those because these are not something that you're going to be doing straight away. These are something you should do later on. This is the basics guide after all and not the advanced, which I will be doing later. This is sort of to help you guys out just on a basic level. Right, so if we open up the map, so you just tap on the mini map on the mobile devices and it will just open it up for you. On here, you actually have to click the little scroll if you're using on the PC. But you'll see this here. This icon here is an expedition master. So let's head on over to the actual portal so I can show you what that looks like real quick. You want to get, as I said earlier, you're going to want to do these daily. And this is what the expedition actually looks like. So you have different types. There's a tier 3 for one player, tier 4 for one player, tier 5 for one player. And if you click on the little group mod here, you have up to 5 players for the expeditions, tier 4, tier 5, and tier 6. You do these daily, you do get a bonus, you get your challenge points and etc. out of here. You just click on whatever one you want to do. If you're tier 3, if you're tier 4, if you're tier 5, then use your one respectively. Don't jump into the harder ones until you feel that you are ready. You can try them out. I'd recommend just doing what you are doing at the beginning. That is around your actual level so far. And that is your basics of dungeons. Let me know down below if you found it useful. As I said, this is very basic stuff, so you can wrap your head around the sort of different mechanics in the game. I don't want to overfeed you because there are a lot of mechanics in the game. And there's a lot of different levels of mechanics, but I don't want these videos to be 40 minutes long each time I do them. Remember to like and sub if you haven't already. This is your one-stop shop for mobile content. Fly safe and avoid local chat scams. I want to say a huge thank you to all my patrons. Without you guys, I wouldn't be able to continue doing what I'm doing. If you'd like to find out how to become a patron and how to get early access to my content, please look down in the description. Fly safe and avoid local chat scams.